Hello everybody, my name is Eric Hackenberger. I'm doing this a little bit later than I thought because my first screen recording software lagged my audio by quite a bit, making this tutorial significantly harder to follow. So, what is this tutorial, which is named a funny name, Man.io? Basically, if you've ever wanted to build your own web application or website with more than just content, but like dynamic content and interactivity, this is one way to do it. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it, but we're going to be focusing on one that is heavily based on JavaScript and some of the technology surrounding that. So, as I just mentioned, this is a video tutorial for developing your own single page application. You'll be able to follow along at my GitHub, which is my username is ehack, and this Git is called man.io. Check the links in the description before you ask. I'm going to put most of the stuff that I use on here in the YouTube description, so hopefully that'll kind of stem a lot of questions. But if you do have a question on something specific that I've done, feel free to put it in the comments, or even better, you should just email it to me because I'm more likely to check that than I am the comments. So without further ado, what technologies are we using? The M in man is MongoDB. What is it? It's a NoSQL database, meaning that it's document versus table based. And why are we using it? Because it uses JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation, like documents. You can imagine that if we're using primarily JavaScript, it's handy to also have our database store its data in a way that looks like a JavaScript object. AngularJS is a front-end JavaScript framework developed by Google, and we're using it because it's great for creating SPAs, or single-page applications. It's also easy to make the front end play nicely with the back end and do test-driven development with AngularJS. Node.js is basically a server-side interpreter for JavaScript. We're using it because we want to be able to use the Socket.io library, and also because JavaScript in the front end and JavaScript in the back end, and also in the database, makes your life a lot easier instead of having to kind of stream the data in different ways to different languages and technologies so they'll understand it properly. Nginx. I love Nginx, huge fan. It is a web server like Apache, which you may have heard of, and we're using it because it is extremely lightweight and efficient, and it is great for serving static content. This way, our node server doesn't need to also be a web server, and it can focus on making decisions about the content and talking to the database, and Nginx can do what it's good at, which is serving up static content. Socket.io is a WebSocket library, and we're using it because since we have a single page application, we don't ever reload the page, meaning that there is no HTTP request sort of thing that goes to the server and asks for new information. So we use WebSockets instead, which is more efficient because it doesn't have the overhead of an HTTP request. In addition, you'll see how nicely it plays with like Node and Angular. Makes it really, really easy to use. So today's tutorial goals are to set up a server. I'm going to be setting up one running Ubuntu 14.04, install Node.js, Node Package Manager, NPM, Nginx, and MongoDB. Then we're going to configure Nginx, create a setup project folder, and create a hello world index file and see it run. If you already know how to set up a server, or you want to set it up on something different like CentOS or OS X or Windows or whatever you want, then you can skip it. That's why this is tutorial 0. However, there might be people who want to build web pages but have absolutely no idea where to start, so this will kind of get them set up with a computer that can run it. So I get my servers from DigitalOcean. It's pretty cheap. It's about $5 for their lowest server, which gives you 20 gigs of disk space and half a gigabyte of RAM. So you can set one up there. As you can see, I've highlighted its IP address. Please don't DDoS me. And once you've done that, you can switch over to your terminal and you can SSH into it, which I've already done. And you can see I've already set some stuff up because, like I said, I've run through this tutorial once already, but unfortunately, it was totally unlistenable. So the first thing you want to do is run apt-get update and apt-get upgrade. I've already run them, and as you can see, I get stuck at one point because one of the Ubuntu kind of security servers is not responding, and so I can't go any farther, so I'm going to Control-C, cancel out of this. It's okay, I already ran my update and upgrade earlier, But you don't need to watch me run it again anyways, because it just takes a lot of time and it's boring. The next thing you want to do is let's install Node.js. So that's apt-get install Node.js. Mine's just going to tell me it's already installed, but for you it should ask, do you want to install this program? It'll take up so many megabytes of disk space, press Y and press enter, and it'll automatically install it for you. If this was successful, you should be able to type in Node.js, and you'll see that I have a JavaScript console. So if you're not familiar with JavaScript, this is a great way to see. This is a good way to kind of play with and test out JavaScript. So, make strings, do math, figure out what an array plus an object is, and stuff like that. So if you've installed it correctly, you should be able to have this console by typing Node.js, and you can play around for a bit. Control D will take you out of it. It means end of file. The next thing you want to install is Node Package Manager. So type in apt-get install npm. Again, mine will already say that it's installed. And what Node Package Manager is that if you want any libraries to help you with your Node.js project, you can install them with the Node Package Manager. It makes it really easy to keep all your kind of dependencies up to date or install the project on a new machine. And we'll get to the details later, but it'll be really useful. And as you can see, if you install it correctly, you should be able to type npm space -v to see what version you have. And if you installed it, you should get a number back. Next, we're going to install Nginx. So apt-get install Nginx. And again, mine says it's already installed. And when you're done, it should already be running. So if we type something like nginx-t, we can see where the configuration is. And we can see that basically our configuration is good and is successful. Or if we type in service nginx restart, we can see that it restarted just fine and everything is good. So Nginx, when you install it, usually starts running automatically. If it doesn't, type in service nginx start, which does nothing because it's already running. The last thing we need to do is we need to install MongoDB. This is slightly more complicated, at least on Ubuntu. If you go to docs.mongodb.org, it'll tell you for your different systems how to install it. So for Ubuntu, we have to add a public key in a new list file, so we know apt knows where to find the Mongo repository. When we're done, we would update again, and then we would run the sudo apt-get install command with mongodb-org, which will give you the latest stable version. So again, I've already run this, and if you need help, go to docs.mongodb.org, and they have really good ones to help you with your individual systems. Sometimes after you install it, it'll give you an error, and if you read the error, it'll say something like, could not find the directory data db. If that's the case, just type in make directory data db. You'll need a -p in there if you do it all in one step, which I'm not going to do because I already made it. So that's a common error that's encountered when you install MongoDB. The next thing you want to do is, if everything went right with Mongo, is type in Mongo. Just like Node, you'll get a console back, and this is how you can interact with your database. So if you want more practice interacting with MongoDB, you can use this to play around with it or look through your collections and stuff, but we don't have any right now, so we'll leave that for a later time. Again, Control D will kick you out of the MongoDB shell. So now that all that has been installed, all we have to do is create a project folder and then configure Nginx to run for it. Run using that. Run and direct users from our site to that folder. So I like to make a folder in my root directory because this is a production server and I'm the only one who uses it and no one else can even log in. So if you'll notice, I have a file called Nginx in my root directory, but you can put your folder anywhere. Just make sure that you change the appropriate fields in the configuration file so Nginx knows where to find it. So inside Nginx, I have a folder called man.io. I'm going to put all the websites I build in this Nginx folder, and I'm going to put all the information for the man.io website in the man.io file. So we'll change directory into that. And if we take a look, I have a folder called static. Static is where I'm going to put all my like HTML files, stuff that doesn't have to do with the web application and is purely front-end material. So if we look inside static, you'll see that there's an index.html file. So I suggest you create a folder called static inside a man.io file, and then inside that folder, make an index file. If you look at it, it's extremely simple. It's just HTML, empty head, and a body with a header that says hello world. But you can write whatever you want. We're obviously going to be upgrading that later. So that's how you set up your project folder. Create an Nginx folder, create a folder for your man.io project or whatever you want to call your web application, and then I suggest that you make a static folder and put your index file in there. If you use a different directory setup, that's fine. Just keep it in mind as we edit the Nginx configuration folder, which we're going to do now. So if you type in nginx-t, it'll tell you where the configuration folder is. It usually is in the root folder etc nginx. We're not going to nginx.conf though. It's much better to edit the files in sites enabled. So we're going to edit one. I already made it, but you're going to have to make your own. But I've already made it because, like I said, I ran through this once before. And it is called, I don't even remember what I called it. Oh, man. Right, man.io. No? Oh, I can't. I thought I had Vim on, not CD. So yeah, I made one called man.io. So if we edit that, we can take a look at it through editing. We set up a new server for Nginx. We tell it to listen on port 80. And since I do not have a domain name pointed towards this, I just put localhost, and I tell it that this is the default server. So any traffic that comes into our IP address on port 80, Nginx is going to point towards this server, the server defined by these brackets. Our root is nginx man.io/static. And if it is, because remember, we're using Nginx to serve all our static files. And so if you have a different directory set up, this needs to be different for you. And our index is called index.html. So inside static, this is the file it'll first try to serve. Then we have a location block saying that for all locations inside Nginx, man.io, and static, try the file that matches the URI that got passed in. So if they try or IP address /index.html, it'll match nginx man.io static /index.html. So it will match. So we will find so it'll serve that file back. And then you don't have to worry about this. This is just for error handling, and we're going to do some more advanced server configuration probably next time. I'm not going to get into it, or maybe I'll make a 0.51. But this is good enough to get us going. The last thing is this default server needs to be taken out of the default configuration because by default, that's where it goes. So write and exit that and edit your default file inside sites enable, and it will be right here. So you see for IP6 addresses, it's still the default server. But for IP4, we don't want it to be the default server anymore because all it's going to say is welcome to Nginx, and there is all it's going to say is welcome to Nginx. We don't want that. We want to say hello world. So it'll be on this line right here, listen 80. It'll say default server after it. Just delete that and save. If everything has gone well, we should be able to type in nginx-t again, which will tell us, give us one warning, conflicting name on localhost, probably with default, that's fine. And then I'll say, all right, our configuration is okay, which means that we can type in service, nginx, restart, and it should go okay. And it does. And now if we go to our IP address, we see that hello world appears. And if we were to edit that file, nginx man static index, to something else, maybe we'll see that it is instantly reflected. Tutorial 0 is done. So thank you everybody for listening. If you have comments or questions, feel free to email me or put them in the comment section of YouTube. I think I will be releasing a 0.5 that goes over how to configure Nginx a little bit more in depth. So if you're interested, watch that. If not, or you already know all this already and I've bored you to death, please just skip to tutorial 1, where we're going to be installing Angular and Foundation and get a much prettier looking Hello World up, as well as going over some of the functionality of Angular. All right, thank you very much.